Hey y'all, Wild Riley, I'm back. I've been kind of inspired by my cousin. My cousin's been telling me to step it up a notch, produce more content, and also use that content more for sustaining my life. So here we go. I've been working on this kind of wilderness survival challenge where I'm creating a paleo pack. It's like a kind of a wilderness backpack made out of natural materials, and it's been kind of a gradual process, and it starts with the basics. And actually old Dave Canterbury spells it out pretty good. Anything that's hard to make in the wilderness is what you want to bring out with you. And so even our ancestors, before they'd strike out into the wilderness, they'd either know how to make these things or they'd bring them with them. And preferably they'd probably bring ready to go materials with them. So here's a few of the items that I've been able to kind of collect over the last couple of years, just here and there. You know, because we live in the modern age. I'm kind of busy at work and doing things, but I'm living in the village and I'm slowly putting together my paleo pack. So here it goes. I have my atlatl. So this atlatl stick comes from a piece of laurel bay. It's like a Oregon myrtle wood or laurel bay. It's in the avocado family. It grows out in California and Oregon. And this had been a signpost tree for a mountain lion that had been scratching its claws down the tree. So and it had a slight bend to it. You can kind of see the slight bend. So it has kind of like a bird beak on the end, and then a handle grip. And I've been kind of working on it so it fits my hand just right, and it adds an extra fulcrum. So when I want to throw something like a spear, and this will be like a spear stick right here, a piece of elderberry, which I grow, and I also harvest them when I see good straight ones. And this one doesn't look super straight, but it is. It's relatively straight for elderberry. And typically you'd actually create the spear so that the skinny end is facing backwards and the broad end is pointing forwards. So we got the beginnings of a atlatl set, one spear and one thrower. And I'm going to be adding more spears to the kit. They got to be the same length, kind of have to have a similar weight spearhead on the end, and then also have feathers. And so I do have feathers. These are just turkey feathers collected from the woods. I have wild turkey all over the place around here. Our Native American ancestors would typically use red-tailed hawk feathers in this region. But to do so would get me in trouble with the authority. So I'm going to use turkey shed feathers. Pretty much turkeys drop their feathers in sets every year when they molt. So we got part of a spear set right there. And then next would be the obsidian. So we got some red obsidian here. It flakes kind of crumbly, but it's a really showy piece. I just think I haven't been napping it quite, striking it from the right angles and stuff, but here's an old spearhead that I made back in the day when I was just a kind of adolescent. And so far it's stuck around and stayed within my life. But I have big pieces of obsidian that I've collected over the years. So obsidian's not a problem. But in my region, obsidian is kind of hard to find. It's a volcanic glass. So it's usually found its way down to my region through trade routes. But it was definitely one of the main stones used for hunting next to chert. Chert's a little bit more common around here than obsidian. And then quartz is not very good for knapping, but it was used to make arrowheads. Probably better arrowheads than this one that I made. But this is old school. I can knap a little bit better now. So then the next thing would be fire. So I got kind of the hunting implements out of the way. The next thing would be fire. So out in my region, we have this like long leaf yucca, and I've collected the yucca fibers, the leaves to make fibers out of, and I'm gonna have to soak them and pound them between a couple of river stones, and then soak them in water for a couple days and kind of slacken up the fiber. And here's an example, just as a good example of how the fibers turn out when you process them. So it's like a friction fire that I made where the end of it broke off. I used the rest of the fiber actually to make a fire, and it worked out okay. But it's pretty much a snare loop on the end of a knot. And I'm wearing this yucca fiber to see how long it lasts. And so once you get your fiber processed and woven, you'll end up with something like this here. So it's yucca and stinging nettle. And there's multiple kind of bowstring length looped over, I guess, hanks of rope here. So it could be used for a bowstring or snares or lashing or for a belt or something like that. A bowstring for a bow and arrow set, or for a friction fire set. So here's my friction fire set. Showed it before. I have more of them. You know, sometimes I'll just blast out a coal just to prove concept, so that I know that the particular piece that I have is capable of making a coal. And so that goes kind of in lieu with the fibers. And by the way, most of the people that I see out there especially on YouTube, making a friction fire, they're not weaving their own stinging nettle or yucca fiber or willow bark, or they're not weaving their own fiber to make the string to make the bow fire happen. And a lot of times they're using like a ball bearing as the bearing block and everything. That's fine to get the hang of it, but it's also cheating. When you're out in the woods, you need to be able to make a fire out of knowing what type of materials to acquire for either making the bearing block or the hearth board or the string, and then also the spindles. And here we have spindles, and I found that making spindles about as wide as my pinky finger, so like this one, these are the best width, in my opinion, for making a spindle. But for a, what do you call it, like not a bow drill, but a hand drill, even skinnier is good. You notice how I kind of strip the bark off, but I leave those striations? That gives you more grip on the spindle itself. Aside from being a good spindle, it's also a good arrow. So my spindles can be repurposed as arrows. So it's something to think about here. And then an elderberry cane that's been kind of hollowed out. This particular one I tried to make a flute. Didn't work out so well. But I've been making these elderberry flutes, so you can either stack them in a row, make musical instruments, flutes, but usually what I make out of them is like spice containers for carrying like pepper and salt and stuff out in the woods. And then another thing I made back in the old 2020 era was a black pottery made out of mud, clay, and sand for my backyard. So I started digging a latrine back there in case the water supply ran out. I was like freaking out. And I dug down past the hard pan, got through some soft dirt, and then hit clay. And then so I started using the clay to form bowls and different types of urns and stuff. And then I fired it with the old school black pottery method. And you can see that like beautiful line where it was sitting kind of below the heat line there. But yeah, like a nice bowl. The only drawback to this is it's like very fragile. So for a permanent camp, this would be great, but for traveling, not so great. It's very fragile. The chances that it's gonna, drop your pack, it's gonna bang against a rock and shatter it. Those chances are very high. So I'd recommend on the road, bring in like a less fragile thing, like maybe a piece of wood that's been hollowed out or something. But anyhow, that's my progress so far. So plenty of cordage of different types here. Some of it's double back. I got the fibers to make more, and the yucca is way superior to stinging nettle. And then I got the ability to make fire. So fire, cordage, calories or combustion, container, calories, also self-defense. Same thing with these ones, adding to calories. Cutting tools, got our obsidian, the long spear shaft, and some more fletchings for a spear or an arrow. So that's kind of how it looks when you look at it from above. Sorry for making you dizzy, but thanks for watching. Wild Riley out.